Case 1. Barbara Graham, June 3, 1955. San Quentin State Prison, California. At 11:28 in the morning, a woman in her early 30s was led into the gas chamber. She had requested a blindfold. She didn't want to look at the people watching her die. Her last words were, "Good people are always so sure they're right." To understand why Barbara Graham ended up there, you have to go back to the night of March 9, 1953, Burbank, California. A gang of 5 knocked on the door of 64-year-old Mabel Monahan, a frail widow living alone. They believed her former son-in-law, a Las Vegas gambler, had hidden over $100,000 in cash inside her home. Barbara knocked first. She told Mabel her car had broken down and she needed to use the phone. The moment the door opened, the men forced their way in. What happened next was brutal. Mabel was pistol-whipped. Her hands were bound behind her back. A pillowcase was placed over her head. She was dragged to a hallway closet and suffocated. The gang spent 20 minutes ransacking the house. They left empty-handed, never knowing. $15,000 in jewelry was sitting in a purse just feet away. Mabel's gardener found her body 2 days later. The hallway was covered in blood. Barbara was arrested 6 weeks after the murder. But the moment that sealed her fate came in jail. She tried to pay a fellow inmate $25,000 to give her a false alibi. That inmate was working with an undercover officer. The conversation, including Barbara admitting she was at the scene, was recorded. At trial, Barbara asked the jury, "Oh, have you ever been desperate? Do you know what it means not to know what to do?" The jury did not sympathize. She was convicted of first-degree murder. On June 3, 1955, Barbara Graham was executed at age 32, the third woman ever put to death in California's gas chamber. She was ready to die at 10 a.m. Fate made her wait until 11:42. Her final words about that delay: "Why do they torture me?" But if Barbara Graham's story feels like a relic of another era, the next case proves that when a mother's mind breaks completely, the consequences are unimaginable. Case 2. LaShuan Ternice Harris, October 19, 2005, San Francisco, California. It started as a normal Tuesday morning. A young mother took her 3 children, all under the age of 7, on a train from Oakland to San Francisco. She bought them hot dogs. They walked along Fisherman's Wharf like any other family on a day out. Then they arrived at Pier 7. Lashwan Harris, 23 years old, had been battling severe paranoid schizophrenia for years. She had been hospitalized 6 times in the 20 months before this day. Doctors had released her each time without long-term care. On the night before the pier, she told investigators she had heard voices instructing her to make a sacrifice. A witness named Yashpal Singh watched in horror as Lashwan stripped her children of their clothing. One by one, she threw all 3 of them over the railing into the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. Officers found her minutes later, pushing an empty stroller away from the pier. Her children's clothes were folded inside it. When asked where her children were, she said they were fine, they were with their father. Only one body was ever recovered. In her videotaped confession, Lashwan described her youngest child laughing as she dropped him. He thought it was a game. At trial, the jury convicted her of 3 counts of second-degree murder, but the judge ruled her legally insane, incapable of understanding what she had done. She was committed indefinitely to a state psychiatric facility with a sentence of 25 years to life. On the morning of the murders, Lashwan's own mother had called a social worker and warned them her daughter might hurt the children. The social worker didn't act on the call. As of 2026, Lashwan Harris remains confined in a California state psychiatric hospital. She has been institutionalized for over 20 years. She can only be released if doctors certify she is legally sane, something that has not happened. The system failed before the crime. 3 children paid for it. If Lashwan's tragedy began in a broken mind, the next case began in something far colder, pure calculation. Case 3. Suzuka Hatakeyama. April 9, 2006. Noshiro City, Akita Prefecture, Japan. 9-year-old Ayaka Hatakeyama went missing on a spring afternoon. Her body was found the next day in the Fujikoto River, 2 kilometers from her home. Police ruled it an accidental drowning. Her mother, 33-year-old Suzuka Hatakeyama, publicly condemned the police as incompetent. She told neighbors Ayaka never played near the river. She launched her own investigation, going door to door asking if anyone had seen her daughter. Then, 5 weeks later, 7-year-old Goken Yonyama disappeared on his walk home from school. He lived 2 doors down from Suzuka. His body was found the next morning in the grass along the bank of the Yoneshiro River. This time, police looked closer at Suzuka. Forensic evidence was damning. Fibers from Goken's clothing were found in the trunk of Suzuka's car. His hair matched samples taken from inside her home. Traces of blood and urine were found at the entrance of her house and inside her deceased daughter's bedroom. She was arrested on June 4, 2006. For days, she denied everything. Then, on June 9th, she confessed to strangling Goken with a cord. The truth about Ayaka emerged during the trial. Prosecutors alleged Suzuka had pushed her own daughter off a bridge into the river, reportedly irritated when the child asked to stop and look at fish. The motive for Goken's murder was perhaps even more disturbing. Suzuka told investigators that she had watched him playing happily and felt a sudden, overwhelming jealousy because her own daughter was gone. She wanted to give Ayaka a playmate in the afterlife. On March 19, 2008, Suzuka Hatakeyama was sentenced to life in prison. The death penalty was avoided because the court ruled Goken's murder was not premeditated. On sentencing day, 3,000 people lined up for 26 available seats. As of 2026, Suzuka Hatakeyama has spent nearly 18 years in a Japanese prison cell. She will never be released. 3 cases in, and every killer so far acted alone. The next one had a camera crew hired by the victim's own wife. Case 4. Clara Harris. July 24, 2002. Nassau Bay, Texas. Clara Harris was a successful orthodontist. She had been married to her husband David for nearly 10 years. They co-owned a chain of dental offices together. By all appearances, they had everything. Then, Clara discovered David was having an affair with his receptionist, Gail Bridges. Clara did what few women do. She hired a private detective agency called Blue Moon Investigations to follow her husband and document the relationship. That decision would become the most critical piece of evidence in her murder trial. On the evening of July 24th, the detective agency called Clara, David, and Gail were together at the Nassau Bay Hilton Hotel, the exact hotel where Clara and David had been married. Clara drove there immediately. She confronted them in the lobby. A physical altercation broke out. Hotel security escorted Clara to her car. David and Gail walked toward the parking lot. Then Clara accelerated. Witness Oscar Torres watched the silver Mercedes make 3 complete circles in the parking lot. Each time, the car passed over David Harris. His 16-year-old daughter, Lindsay, was in the passenger seat, screaming, "My dad! You've killed my dad!" The entire incident was captured on video by the private detective Clara had hired. At trial, Clara's defense team argued sudden passion that she had been pushed beyond reason by a cheating husband. Prosecutor Mia Magnus dismantled that argument piece by piece, pointing to the videotape and the multiple passes over David's body. On February 13, 2003, the day before what would have been their 10th wedding anniversary, the jury found Clara Harris guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As of 2026, Clara Harris has served over 23 years. She was denied parole and remains incarcerated in Texas. She is currently 57 years old. Love turned to obsession. obsession turned to the parking lot of the hotel where they were married. David Harris never made it to his anniversary. The next killer didn't need a parking lot. She needed only a bedroom, a gun, and a husband who trusted her completely. Case 5. Brynn Hartman. May 28, 1998. Encino, California. Phil Hartman was one of the most beloved comedians in America. Saturday Night Live, The Simpsons, News Radio. His colleagues called him the glue, the reliable one, the one who held everything together. On the morning of May 28, 1998, he was found dead in his bed. He had been shot 3 times while he slept. His wife, Brynn, had pulled the trigger. Brynn Hartman, born Vicky Jo Amdahl, had struggled with cocaine and alcohol addiction for years. She had been sober for nearly a decade, but approximately 5 months before the shooting, she relapsed. Friends described her in those final weeks as volatile, paranoid, and increasingly erratic. On the night of May 27th, Brynn had dinner with a friend, seemed calm, and came home. She and Phil argued. He told her he would leave if she didn't stop using. Then he went to bed. Sometime between 2 and 3 in the morning, Brynn retrieved a .38 caliber handgun from a safe inside the house. She entered the bedroom and fired. Afterward, she drove to a friend's house and confessed. He didn't believe her. She was too intoxicated. They drove back together. He saw the body and called 911. When police arrived and began removing the children from the home, Brynn locked herself in the bedroom with Phil's body. Officers heard a single gunshot. She had taken her own life. Toxicology confirmed cocaine, alcohol, and antidepressants in her system. No trial was ever held. Phil Hartman was 49 years old. Brynn was 40. Their 2 children were placed in the care of Brynn's sister in Wisconsin. Phil's ashes were scattered over Catalina Island, as he had requested. There was no verdict, no sentence, only 2 children without parents, and an industry that lost the man they called irreplaceable. One marriage destroyed by jealousy, another by addiction. The next case involves 2 teenagers and a to-do list written in ink on a teenage girl's arm. If you're finding value in these stories right now, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Seriously, those 2 small actions are the single biggest way you can say thank you for the hours that go into researching every one of these cases. Every click tells us to keep going, keep digging, keep telling these stories, and trust me, the cases coming up next are ones you will not forget. Before we get into the next case, I want to try something. These women came from California, Texas, Michigan, Japan, Maryland, Georgia, every corner of the world. And I want to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how far this channel reaches, and I'll be reading every single one. Now back to the cases. Case 6, Holly Harvey.
Where did you get the knife from?
From the kitchen.
And what type of knife was it?
The biggest one.
When you stabbed her in the back, what happened?
She screamed.
Did you see where you stabbed her?
When I looked down, it was in his neck.
August 2nd, 2004, Fayetteville, Georgia. Holly Harvey was 15 years old. She lived with her grandparents, Carl and Sarah Collier, because her mother was serving a prison sentence. By every account, Carl and Sarah loved Holly, completely providing for her, protecting her, doing everything grandparents are supposed to do. Holly hated living there. Holly had started a romantic relationship with 16-year-old Sandra Ketchum. The Colliers disapproved. They had forbidden the girls from seeing each other. That restriction, to Holly, was apparently unforgivable. Sandra later told investigators that Holly had been talking about killing her grandparents for days. Sandra even tried to obtain a firearm from friends beforehand. When that failed, on the morning of August 2nd, Holly walked to the kitchen and selected the largest knife she could find. The two girls practiced stabbing a mattress to test how sharp the blade was. When Carl and Sarah came downstairs, Holly attacked. Sarah was stabbed first. Carl fought back and ran upstairs to call for help. Holly pulled the phone cord from the wall. Carl threw a coffee mug at the girls. It wasn't enough. Both grandparents were killed. The girls fled in Carl's truck, stealing money and jewelry. During the drive, they called friends and told them to watch the 10 o'clock news. They were arrested 17 hours later at a beach house on Tybee Island, 4 hours away, where they had befriended two boys and spent the night. When Holly was booked, she asked the arresting officer if her grandparents were really dead and whether they had died all the way. Found written in ink on Holly's arm, a to-do list: kill, keys, money, jewelry. Holly Harvey was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. Sandra Ketchum received 3 concurrent life sentences. As of 2026, Holly Harvey has been in a Georgia prison cell for over 21 years. She will be eligible for parole review, but release is far from guaranteed. 3 teenagers wrote to-do lists. 1 nursing home killer kept souvenirs. The next case is perhaps the most methodical of all. Case 7. Gwendolyn Gail Graham. January 1987. Walker, Michigan. Alpine Manor Nursing Home was supposed to be a place of care. Its residents were elderly, many suffering from Alzheimer's disease, many unable to speak or move independently. They were completely vulnerable. Gwendolyn Graham was a 24-year-old nurse's aide. She was also in a relationship with her supervisor, Catherine Wood. And in late 1986, she proposed something monstrous. Graham suggested they kill the patients, not for money, not out of anger, for the thrill, and to bind themselves together with a secret no one else could share. They called it the murder game. Between January and April of 1987, Graham smothered 5 patients using a washcloth pressed over their faces. The victims were elderly women, the most fragile residents on the ward. Their deaths were recorded as natural. No autopsies were performed. Graham kept souvenirs from each victim: an anklet, a handkerchief, a brooch, a set of dentures. She displayed them on a shelf in the home she shared with Wood. The relationship eventually fell apart. Wood confessed to her ex-husband in August 1987. He waited 14 months before going to police. At trial, Wood testified against Graham as part of a plea agreement. Graham's defense argued Wood was a jealous liar who was framing her. The jury didn't buy it. On September 20th, 1989, Gwendolyn Graham was convicted of 5 counts of murder. She was sentenced to 5 terms of life imprisonment without parole. Wood received 20 to 40 years and was released in January 2020. As of 2026, Gwendolyn Graham has spent nearly 37 years in a Michigan prison cell. She is currently 62 years old and will never be released. 5 elderly women. 5 souvenirs. 1 shelf. The next killer didn't need souvenirs, she needed a credit card receipt. Case 8. Dana Sue Gray. February 1994. Canyon Lake, California. Dana Gray had a problem. She had been fired from her nursing job for stealing painkillers. She was drowning in debt. She had filed for bankruptcy. And she had a shopping addiction so severe that she couldn't stop spending even when she had nothing left. Her solution was murder. Dana's first victim was 86-year-old Norma Davis, a woman Dana knew personally, the mother-in-law of her stepmother. Dana killed her in February 1994 and immediately went shopping using Norma's stolen credit cards. 2 weeks later, she visited 66-year-old June Roberts under the pretense of borrowing a book. She strangled her with a telephone cord and drove straight to an upscale mall in Temecula. In March, she attacked 57-year-old Dorinda Hawkins at an antique store, strangling her with a phone cord and stealing $25. Hawkins survived. The following day, a description of the attacker was published in the local newspaper. Dana killed again within 24 hours. 87-year-old Dora Beebe invited Dana inside to look at a map. She never got back up. That same afternoon, Dana went on another shopping spree using Dora's stolen credit cards. That evening, Detective Joseph Greco arrested her on her front porch as she returned home. Inside her sock drawer, credit cards belonging to June Roberts and Dora Beebe. Residents of Canyon Lake were so frightened they had begun sleeping in groups. Some believed a cult was responsible. The truth was far more ordinary and far more chilling. Dana Gray killed for the high of spending, not for the items, for the act of buying them. Faced with a mountain of evidence and the death penalty, Dana pleaded guilty to life without parole. As of 2026, Dana Sue Gray has been in a California prison cell for over 28 years. She is currently 67 years old. She will never leave. Shopping receipts as a trail of evidence. A surgeon's scalpel as a murder weapon. The next case is unlike anything else in this documentary. Case 9, Jean S. Harris. March 10, 1980. Purchase, New York. Jean Harris was the headmistress of the Madeira School, one of the most elite private girls' schools in America. She was poised, educated, and respected. She had also been in a 14-year relationship with Dr. Herman Tarnower, the cardiologist who wrote the best-selling Scarsdale diet book. For 14 years, Tarnower had kept Jean at arm's length while conducting a parallel relationship with his secretary, Lynn Triforos. Jean had stayed. She had accepted it. But by 1980, the humiliations had stacked up. On the evening of March 10th, Jean drove 5 hours from Virginia to Tarnower's home in New York. She brought a .32 caliber revolver, intending, she later claimed, to shoot herself on the grounds of his estate. She had written a 10-page letter to Tarnower, documenting every grievance, every betrayal, every moment she had swallowed her pride. When she arrived, she found another woman's belongings in his bathroom. The rage broke through everything she had carefully contained. Tarnower was shot 4 times. He died at the scene. Jean called police herself. At trial, she maintained the gun had gone off accidentally during a struggle. Prosecutors argued she had attacked a sleeping man in his bed. The jury deliberated for 8 days. They found her guilty of second-degree murder. Jean Harris was sentenced to 15 years to life at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. She wrote 3 books in prison. She had 2 heart attacks behind bars. In 1992, Governor Mario Cuomo commuted her sentence on compassionate grounds. She was released in January 1993 after serving 12 years. Jean Harris died on December 23, 2012, at age 89. She had served her time and lived nearly 20 more years in freedom. A jealous lover. A calculated plan. The next case features a woman who used fear of the supernatural to keep witnesses silent for nearly 3 decades. Case 10. Josephine Gray. March 3, 1974. Montgomery County, Maryland. Josephine Gray's first husband, Norman Stribling, was found shot dead in Montgomery County. Before he died, he had told friends that Josephine had already tried to shoot him in their bed, but the gun had misfired. When police investigated, witnesses refused to testify. The case was dropped. Josephine collected $16,000 in life insurance. She remarried within the year. Her second husband, William Robert Gray, spent the final months of his life terrified. He changed his life insurance beneficiary to remove Josephine. He went to a police detective personally and said, "I believe I'm going to get killed." He was found shot dead in his apartment in November 1990. Josephine was charged. Witnesses recanted. The case collapsed again. She collected over $54,000. The reason witnesses kept disappearing: Josephine practiced voodoo. When police searched her home, they found dolls with pins in them. A wiretap later captured her performing a ritual, mentioning investigators by name, wishing them harm. In a close-knit community where people believed that was enough to silence anyone. By the time her live-in boyfriend Clarence Good was found shot in the trunk of his car in 1996, after conveniently taking out a $100,000 life insurance policy naming Josephine as sole, beneficiary federal investigators had seen enough. They couldn't charge her with murder. The witnesses were gone. Instead, they built a case on mail and wire fraud, the insurance claims. In August 2002, a federal jury found Josephine guilty on 8 counts. She was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. As of 2026, Josephine Gray has spent over 23 years behind bars. She is approximately 79 years old. 3 men died. She was never convicted of a single murder. 3 husbands and boyfriends dead. 1 woman with a very different kind of power over men. The next Black widow used bank accounts instead of voodoo. Case 11. Debra Ann Hartmann. June 8, 1982. Northbrook, Illinois. Werner Hartmann was a 38-year-old German immigrant who had built a small fortune in the car stereo business. He had 2 teenage daughters, a home in the suburbs, and a wife who was already planning his death. Deborah Hartman had left Werner months earlier to move in with her lover, John Scott Karabik, a man she had met at Werner's own store. But leaving wasn't enough. Werner controlled the money. Werner could change his will. Werner was the obstacle. In March 1982, Deborah bribed an insurance agent $3,000 to change the beneficiary on a $250,000 life insurance policy from Werner's daughters to herself. 3 months later, Karabik entered Werner's home and shot him 14 times with a machine pistol. Deborah collected $589,000 in insurance settlements. Then, 2 years later, she threw Karabik out. Federal investigators spent 2.5 years building a case they couldn't quite crack until Deborah's own brother took the stand. He testified that Deborah had confessed the plan to him, and that Karabik had described the killing in vivid detail, including tripping over a tree stump while fleeing the house. No one was charged with murder. It's a state offense, and the state case had gone cold. Instead, federal prosecutors charged conspiracy and insurance fraud. The trial lasted 3 weeks. On March 12, 1990, Deborah Hartman was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. She was released on September 27, 2002, after serving the full term. The fate of Werner's daughters, who were cut out of their father's insurance policy by a bribed agent, was never fully addressed in court. Werner Hartman's killer was never convicted of his murder. The man who pulled the trigger served 16 years. Deborah served 22. She has been free for over 23 years. Case 12. Jordan Lynn Graham. July 7, 2013. Glacier National Park, Montana. Jordan Graham and Cody Johnson had been married for 8 days. The morning after the wedding, Jordan sent a text to her maid of honor. "I should be happy, and I'm just not." In the days that followed, she sent more messages saying she felt obligated to make Cody happy even when she was miserable. She described the marriage as something she had already wanted to escape. On the evening of July 7th, Jordan told Cody she wanted to talk. They drove an hour to Glacier National Park and walked to a spot called The Loop, a rocky ledge on the Going to the Sun road, overlooking a 200-foot drop. An argument started. Jordan later told investigators that Cody grabbed her jacket. She placed one hand on his back, one on his shoulder, and pushed. Cody Johnson fell 200 feet into the ravine below. He was 25 years old. They had been married 8 days. Jordan ran back to the car she had the keys and drove home. She sent text messages to friends during the drive. She mentioned nothing about what had just happened. The next day, she told authorities Cody had left unexpectedly with friends. She created a fake email account and sent herself a message from a fictional person claiming Cody had died on a hike. When his body was eventually found, Jordan led search teams directly to the specific location in the vast park, claiming it was on Cody's bucket list. FBI investigators saw through every layer of the story. Jordan eventually admitted to the push in a recorded interview, saying, "It was a quick thing. I just wanted to get him off me." She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Judge Donald Malloy noted she showed zero remorse and never apologized. On March 27, 2014, Jordan Lynn Graham was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. As of 2026, Jordan Graham has served over 12 years of that sentence. She is currently 35 years old. 8 days of marriage ended at the edge of a cliff. The next case ended in a college dormitory after a stolen wallet. Case 13. Galareka Harrison. September 5, 2007, University of Arizona, Tucson. Galareka Harrison and Mia Henderson were both 18-year-old freshmen. Both were Navajo women in the same Native American Scholars Program. Both lived in the same dormitory at the University of Arizona. And Mia had just discovered that Galareka had been stealing from her. Galareka had taken Mia's student ID, her social security card, and $500 from her bank account. When Mia confronted her on August 30th, she was direct. "I'm pressing charges, and I don't want to live with you anymore." Galareka sent an apology text. Mia ignored it. In the days that followed, Galareka traveled home for the weekend. She told a friend she had a bad feeling that something was going to happen. On the way back to campus, she stopped at Target and bought a large kitchen knife. She told her friend it was for a class. In the early morning hours of September 5th, a resident assistant was woken by screaming and the sound of furniture moving in the room next door. Mia Henderson had been stabbed 23 times. 7 of those wounds were potentially fatal. Most were in her back. Galareka was found in the hallway with a self-inflicted wound to her calf, claiming an unknown man had attacked them both. In her 3-hour police interview, she giggled, then sobbed, then changed her story repeatedly. Investigators already had the receipt from Target. Mia's friends testified that when she had tried to report the initial theft, a campus police officer had laughed and said, "This happens every day." It didn't happen every day, and Mia Henderson paid for that dismissal with her life. In September 2008, Galareka Harrison was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of 2026, Galareka Harrison has spent nearly 19 years in an Arizona prison. She is 36 years old. She will never be released. A dormitory, a campus, a theft that turned fatal. The next case moved to a lake and 3 children strapped into their seats. Case 14. Amanda Hamm. September 2nd, 2003, Clinton Lake, Illinois. It was a Tuesday afternoon in central Illinois. Amanda Hamm, 24 years old, drove to a boat ramp at Clinton Lake with her boyfriend Maurice LaGrone Jr. and her 3 young children, ages 6, 3, and 23 months, buckled into their seats in the back of the car. The car went off the ramp and into the water. Amanda and Maurice stood on the boat ramp and watched it sink. 2 of the children were pronounced dead at the scene. The third died in a Peoria hospital the following day. Both adults were arrested the same afternoon. Prosecutors argued this was premeditated. They claimed LaGrone had grown frustrated with the children as an obstacle in the relationship, and that Amanda had agreed to remove that obstacle. The theory was supported by witness testimony about the state of their relationship and the couple's behavior in the days before. Amanda and Maurice both claimed the car had rolled accidentally, that Maurice had parked too close to the edge. The jury believed something in between. Amanda was acquitted of murder, but convicted of 3 counts of child endangerment resulting in death. She was sentenced to 10 years. Maurice LaGrone was convicted of first-degree murder and received life in prison. Amanda Hamm was released from Dwight Correctional Center on September 9th, 2008, after serving roughly 5 years with good behavior credits. She was picked up by her parents and taken to an undisclosed location. She was 29 years old when she walked out of prison. She has been free for over 17 years. Maurice Legrone remains in an Illinois prison, serving a life sentence. A lake, a boat ramp, a car going under, and 2 adults walking away. The next case also involved a mother and a God she believed was speaking directly to her. Case 15, Abby Grayson, June 21, 2004, Chicago, Illinois. Abby Grayson had been battling severe mental illness for years, diagnosed with bipolar disorder and psychotic paranoid delusions. In the 18 months before June 2004, her family had tried repeatedly to have her hospitalized. Each time, doctors evaluated her and released her. Each time, her sister Alma feared what might happen next. In the early hours of June 21st, Abby placed 2 aerosol cans in her kitchen microwave and turned it on. Then, she went upstairs. She drowned both of her young children, ages 4 and 2, in the bathtub. When firefighters and police arrived at the Carmen Avenue townhouse, Abby was standing outside. She calmly directed a neighbor to call 911 about the fire. She showed no visible distress. Inside, the children were found face down in approximately 1 foot of water in the upstairs bathroom. On June 17th, just 4 days before the murders, Abby had agreed to give the children to their father's family. On June 20th, she changed her mind, went to her sister's house, and took them back. Her sister described Abby that day as being in a daze. Her 4-year-old daughter had said to her in the bath, "Mommy, I don't want to die today." Abby was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and aggravated arson. But in September 2006, a judge ruled her unfit to stand trial based on psychiatric evaluation she was unable to assist in her own defense. She was committed to a state psychiatric facility for a minimum of 1 year, with periodic reviews to follow. The source material does not confirm a trial ever took place. As of the most recent available records, Abby Grayson's legal case remains unresolved. She is believed to still be under court-ordered psychiatric supervision. Case 16, Sheila Graham-Trott, February 16, 2010, Indialantic, Florida. Kelly Brennan was a 46-year-old registered nurse. She was charismatic and well-loved. A friend described her as someone who lit up a room. She was also in a relationship with Daniel Trot, the former mayor of Indialantic, who happened to be separated from his wife of 20 years. That wife was Sheila Graham-Trott. On the evening of February 16th, Sheila told her family she was going to Walmart. Between 7:48 in the evening, when Kelly made her last known phone call from her home, and 8:15, when Kelly failed to arrive at a personal training session, something happened in Kelly's front yard. Police later found tire tracks, a drag mark, and bloodstains in the yard. Blood spatter was also found on the side of Kelly's car. Her body was found 13 miles away, in a wooded area near Mark's Landing, lying on her back. The medical examiner noted her injuries were consistent with repeated blunt force trauma, likely from a hammer that was never recovered. Sheila arrived home that night acting strangely. Her sons were concerned enough to call paramedics. The following morning, Sheila told her sons she had a dream that Kelly Brennan had been hurt. She then drove them in the dark to the exact wooded area where Kelly's body lay. Her sons said, "You're going to have to deal with this yourself. We're out of this." It was Sheila's own mother who called 911. At trial, prosecutors described it as a calculated ambush driven by a love triangle. The defense pointed to Sheila's Walgreens surveillance footage as an alibi and suggested the victim's estranged husband had motive. The jury wasn't persuaded. On September 17, 2014, Sheila Graham-Trott was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. As of 2026, Sheila Graham-Trott has spent over 12 years in a Florida prison cell. She will never be released. A hammer that was never found, a dream that led her sons directly to the body. The next killer left behind something far stranger, a request for her own execution. Case 17. Mary Nance Hanson. January 29, 2010. Salt Lake City, Utah. Tatiana Nikitina was a 34-year-old preschool teacher from Ukraine. She had worked at a Head Start school in Salt Lake City for 2 years, was engaged to be married, and was 2 weeks away from her wedding day. She was also in the middle of a bitter 5-year custody battle involving her 2 young children with her ex-husband, Dale Jankowski. That custody battle had a shadow cast over it by someone else, Dale's mother, Mary Nance Hanson. Tatiana had filed documentation claiming Hansen left threatening voicemails, cut her off in traffic, causing an accident, and repeatedly interfered in custody arrangements. One voicemail allegedly said, "Those kids shouldn't be with you." At 70 years old, Mary Hansen was not the kind of person most people feared until January 29th. Tatiana was in the parking lot of the Head Start school on the phone with her fiancé when Hansen approached. Her fiancé heard what he first thought was a car accident popping sounds, then silence. Witnesses in the parking lot watched Hansen walk up to Tatiana's vehicle and fire multiple rounds from a .38 caliber revolver, then reload, then fire again. Tatiana was shot 4 times in the head. Hansen called 911 herself. When officers asked why she had done it, she said, "I don't know, and that's all I'm going to say." At her plea hearing, Hansen requested lethal injection. When the judge informed her the case did not qualify for the death penalty, she responded, "Well, then I guess I didn't do a good enough job." She pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 years to life. As of 2026, Mary Nance Hanson has spent over 15 years in a Utah prison cell. She is approximately 85 years old. Tatiana Nikitina never made it to her wedding. A grandmother who asked to be executed. The next woman used a scalpel and planned every detail in advance. Case 18. Brigitte Harris. June 28, 2007. Rockaway, Queens, New York. Brigitte Harris had spent her entire life carrying a secret. From the time she was a small child, she alleged, her father, Eric Goodridge, had been abusing her. She reported it to family. She reported it to a pastor during a trip to Liberia. No one intervened. Eric denied everything and called her unstable. By 2007, Brigitte was 25 years old. She had built an independent life, worked as an airport security guard, and remained haunted. Then she learned her father was planning to take her young nieces, including a 7-year-old, back to Liberia with him. She decided to act. Brigitte researched the 1993 Lorena Bobbitt case. She purchased a scalpel online. On June 28th, she lured her father to her Queens apartment, wrestled him to the ground, handcuffed him, and used the scalpel to remove part of his body. She then burned the tissue on her stove and disposed of what remained under a boardwalk to prevent reattachment. Her father died from the trauma. Brigitte called 911 herself and reported that her father was alive and needed help. She then went to her sister's home and checked herself into a psychiatric ward that same evening. At trial in September 2009, Brigitte testified in her own defense. She told the jury she wasn't trying to kill him, she was trying to take away what she called his weapon. Her sister Carlene came forward and stated she had also been abused by their father. Jurors, moved by the testimony, convicted her of the lesser charge of second-degree manslaughter rather than murder. She was sentenced to the maximum, 5 to 15 years. Brigitte Harris was released on parole on August 13, 2012, after serving 5 years. She was 30 years old. She has been free for nearly 14 years. A daughter who acted to protect the next generation. A babysitter who acted out of rage and hid it for 19 years. Case 19. Melissa Ann Haskell. August 26, 1992. King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Ryan Borley was 5 months old. He was the first child of his parents described by his father as a gift from God. His babysitter, 19-year-old Melissa Haskell, had been caring for him since he was 1 month old. On the morning of August 26th, Melissa was alone with Ryan. She was, according to prosecutors, in the grip of heroin withdrawal. Ryan was crying. Melissa placed her hand over his face to quiet him. When Ryan's parents were contacted, Melissa told them she had found him unresponsive in his crib. The original autopsy ruled his death sudden infant death syndrome. Melissa walked free. She married. She had a son of her own. She lived a normal life for 19 years. Then her marriage fell apart. During a bitter custody dispute in 2011, Melissa's estranged husband, Michael LaFleur, went to police. He told them Melissa had confessed the killing to him years earlier. Investigators asked him to wear a wire. In an hour-long recorded conversation, Melissa told her ex-husband, "I will never, ever, ever put my hand over our son's mouth like I did to that baby." The 1992 blood sample was re-examined. A forensic pathologist re-reviewed the original evidence. The death was reclassified as suffocation with acute alcohol intoxication as a contributing factor. Melissa was arrested in August 2011, 19 years after Ryan died. At trial in June 2012, she was convicted of third-degree murder. She was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. As of 2026, Melissa Ann Haskell has been in a Pennsylvania prison cell for over 14 years. Ryan Borley would have been 33 years old. A confession trapped on tape. The next case ended with an acquittal and a blast of music in a courthouse parking lot. Case 20. Mary Beth Harshbarger. September 14th, 2006. Buchan's Junction, Newfoundland, Canada. Mark Harshbarger was 42 years old, an experienced hunter on a dream trip to Newfoundland with his wife Mary Beth, his brother Barry, and their young children. They were staying at a remote hunting lodge, waiting on the edge of the spruce woods as dusk settled in. Mark and a local guide walked into the woods to flush out a black bear. The guide stopped briefly in the trees. Mark walked ahead alone and emerged from the woods wearing dark blue denim overalls. No hunter orange safety vest. He was approximately 200 feet from the truck. Mary Beth raised her rifle. She looked through the scope twice. She later said she saw a big black thing. She fired once. Mark Harshbarger was struck in the abdomen. He died on the spot. Mary Beth collected approximately $550,000 in life insurance following his death. Canadian authorities investigated for 2 years. A legal battle over extradition from the United States took another 2 years. At trial in Newfoundland, prosecutors argued Mary Beth was an experienced shot who took a reckless risk in failing light. They noted she knew her husband was in the woods and could emerge at any moment. The defense called it a horrific accident, a constellation of unfortunate facts. On October 28, 2010, Justice Richard LeBlanc found Mary Beth Harshbarger not guilty. He ruled the shooting an accident and nothing more. Mark's father said, "It isn't an accident to mistake someone for something else and kill him." When Mary Beth left the courthouse parking lot after her acquittal, witnesses reported a whoop of celebration and a blast of music from her car. She returned to Pennsylvania. No charges have been brought since. The outcome divided a family. The evidence was never enough. Some cases end in verdicts. Some end in questions that never fully close. The final case in this documentary ends in a motel room with a newborn, a garbage bag, and the most ordinary kind of catastrophic failure. 2 people who panicked. Case 21, Amy S. Grossberg. November 12, 1996. Newark, Delaware. Amy Grossberg was 18 years old, a freshman at the University of Delaware, and 8 months pregnant. Her boyfriend, Brian Peterson, was at Gettysburg College, an hour away. Neither of them had told their parents. Amy had been hiding the pregnancy under baggy clothes at home for months, terrified, specifically of her mother's reaction. At 12:45 in the morning, her water broke in her dormitory room. She called Brian. He drove through the night. They checked into room 220 of the Comfort Inn in Newark. Brian paid $52 cash. Amy delivered the baby alone in the motel room. The infant was born alive, a boy, 6 pounds, 2 ounces, 20 inches long. Shortly after the birth, Brian placed the baby in a plastic garbage bag and left it in a dumpster behind the motel. The couple drove to a car wash to clean the interior of Brian's car. Then they returned to their respective colleges. The next day, a cleaning woman found bloodied sheets in room 220 and called police. Days later, Amy collapsed at college. With severe complications, she had not expelled the placenta. At the hospital, doctors confirmed she had recently given birth. K-9 units located the infant's remains in the dumpster. Both teenagers were arrested 5 days after the murder. Initially, both claimed the baby had been stillborn. The autopsy proved otherwise. Cause of death, multiple skull fractures and shaken baby syndrome. The infant had been born alive and healthy. Brian Peterson pleaded guilty to manslaughter. He served 20 months and was released in January 2000. Amy Grossberg pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 30 months. She was released in May 2000 after serving 24 months. Both walked free before their 22nd birthdays. The baby in the dumpster never had a name. 21 cases, 21 different moments, when someone made a choice that could not be undone. Some acted out of rage, some out of greed, some out of a mind too broken to know the difference, and some perhaps the most chilling out of nothing more than panic. Victims had names, they had ages, they had people who loved them and mornings they were never going to see. Never stop paying attention to the people around you. Never stop asking questions. Subscribe to Capital True Crime and share this with someone who needs to hear these stories. Because awareness is the only thing that changes outcomes. This has been Capital True Crime. We'll see you in the next one.